My father, Arthur, lived in a perpetual state of terror regarding my mortality. He was convinced that the moment he shuffled off this mortal coil, I would be left defenseless, destined to follow him into the grave shortly after. To prevent this tragedy, he came up with a plan that was as brilliant as it was insane. He forced the regent of the kingdom to marry into our family. From that moment on, the regent, Harold, and I became a couple bound not by love, but by mutual resentment and a shared hatred of the circumstances. Or so I thought. Later, when I had one foot in the grave and offered him his freedom with a weary smile, he didn't take it. Instead, he dragged me back from the brink of death, gripping my collar with trembling hands, his face flushed red with a mixture of panic and rage. "I have spent half my life raising you, keeping you alive," Harold snarled, his voice breaking. "I couldn't even bear to touch you for fear of breaking you. Don't you dare die on me now. You try dying, and see what happens." I was the capital's most famous invalid. A minor illness every 3 days and a major catastrophe every 5 was simply my routine. But the most critical issue was my constitution. I was as fragile as a house of cards in a gale. Even in the sweltering heat of summer, a slight breeze could send me into a coughing fit so violent I would spit blood. My father had me late in life. My mother died in a difficult labor giving birth to me, leaving Arthur to raise me alone. People outside our estate often joked that my father hadn't birthed a son, but an ancestor to be worshipped. When Arthur heard these jests, he didn't get angry. Instead, he would grin foolishly, his chest puffing out with pride. "My son is my little ancestor," he would declare, "and I am happy to serve him." I would smile foolishly along with him, though the light reflecting off his silver hair was often so bright it made my eyes water. "Keith, don't listen to their nonsense," he would whisper to me, shielding me from the wind. "We will both live to be 100 years old." Whether we would live to 100, I didn't know. I only knew that my father was slowing down. He had been 50 when I was born, and 20 years of constant worry and labor had hollowed out his body. Yet, he never cared about himself. His thoughts were entirely consumed by what would happen to me when he was gone. With a body like mine, marriage and children were out of the question. No noble young lady would look twice at a walking corpse. "Dad," I said to him one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of bruised purple, "I won't live long anyway. Why don't we just go together when the time comes?" Arthur, who had been coughing moments before, suddenly sat up straight, cured by pure indignation. "What nonsense are you spouting? I'm going out tomorrow to find you a match." "A match? What kind of match?" I asked, bewildered. "Dad, you're confused. I'm a man. I can't take a wife." "Don't you worry," he waved a dismissive hand. "I have my ways. I'll find you a good family." A man marrying a man had no precedent in our kingdom, let alone a man who was a sickly invalid liable to drop dead at any moment. But my father was nothing if not resourceful. A few days later, I stared in horror at the handsome man bound like a prize hog in the center of our living room. The shock was so great that my chest seized, and I coughed up a splatter of blood. "Dad," I wheezed, wiping my mouth. "Why is the regent tied up in our living room?" "He wasn't willing," Arthur said matter-of-factly, as if discussing the price of grain. "So, I had to bring him here by force." My father didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with kidnapping the most powerful man in the kingdom. He calmly spooned medicine into my mouth while asking for my opinion. "What opinion can I have?" I choked out. "Let him go. Apologize immediately. This is treason." No. Arthur shook his head stubbornly. "I have already petitioned the king. He has granted the marriage decree. In a few days, you two will be married." "Dad, are you insane?" I felt the darkness creeping into the edges of my vision. "Marry him? He'll kill us." I would have fainted right then if not for the ginseng soup I had just swallowed. Arthur patted my hand soothingly. "It's fine, Keith. You just focus on getting married. If anything goes wrong, I'll take the blame." I was speechless. I stammered for a long time, finally managing to mutter, "This is absurd." Even if I were willing, there was no way the regent, Harold, would be willing. I hurriedly gestured for the servants to remove the gag from Harold's mouth, bowing my head in profuse apology. "Your Highness," I gasped. "My father is old and confused. Please forgive his insolence." Harold stood up, dusting the dirt from his fine silk robes with an air of disgust. His sharp, gloomy gaze swept over me from head to toe. I shivered uncontrollably under his scrutiny, realizing why he was the most feared man in the court. His aura was chilling, sharp enough to cut skin. Just when I thought Harold would order the execution of the entire Miller family in a fit of rage, his next words left me stunned for a long time. "Pick a date," Harold said flatly. "Huh?" I gaped. Harold frowned, his tone displeased. "Do you look down on me?" "I wouldn't dare," I exclaimed. Harold let out a cold snort, seemingly accepting the situation with immense reluctance, and strode out of the house amidst my father's joyous farewells. I initially thought this was just a ploy by my father to keep me calm, so I would recover. I never expected that a few days later, a heavy imperial decree would arrive, confirming the marriage. The shock caused me to faint on the spot, and I nearly didn't wake up. Rumors began to circulate outside that I had died. In the morning, my father went out with his spear, ready for duty. By the afternoon, he had received impeachments from half the court. By evening, a royal decree arrived ordering him to stay home and recuperate. It was a nice way of saying he was fired. Without his salary, my father was so worried he couldn't eat. He was terrified he wouldn't be able to afford the expensive medicine that kept me alive. "Dad," I said softly, watching him pace. "The decree is already down. With Harold involved, I'll live a long time." Because I had fallen so ill from the shock, Arthur felt guilty about forcing me and didn't mention the wedding again. I didn't want to have much contact with Harold, so we dragged it out. But seeing my father's distress, I finally relented. "Fine," I said. "I'll do it." Arthur let out a long breath, his eyes red as he patted my hand. Once I agreed, Harold began the preparations. The two families interacted frequently, and trouble naturally followed. When spring arrived, there was a grand flower-viewing banquet. I was invited as an exception, and since I couldn't decline, I had to bite the bullet and attend. The moment I arrived, several young noblemen who harbored secret affections for Harold surrounded me. Yes, noblemen. Harold was popular with everyone. They launched into a tirade of insults, verbally tearing me apart. I didn't care what they said about me. I was used to being called a walking corpse, but then they started insulting my father. "That old fool," one sneered, selling his cripple of a son to secure power. The rage hit me like a physical blow. I grabbed a teacup from a nearby table and hurled it at the speaker. The young nobleman, a man named Lucas, was furious. He abandoned all decorum, dragging me down and kicking me to the ground. The smell of blood and the heat of anger rushed to my head simultaneously. Summoning strength I didn't know I possessed, I picked up a decorative rock from the garden bed and smashed it into his head. I, who usually didn't have the strength to breathe, knocked a grown man unconscious. The other noblemen panicked, screaming that they would report me to the authorities. My vision went black, and my body turned ice cold. I felt like I was dying. Suddenly, a hand gripped my wrist with bruising force. Harold's face, dark as ink, crashed into my fading vision. His harsh words pierced my eardrums. "Are you crazy?" Before I could retort, I passed out. It felt like I had taken a tour of the underworld. When I woke, my body ached terribly. Harold was leaning against a screen, his arms crossed, watching me coldly. "You almost died," he said. "Where is my father?" I tried to sit up, but the sound of chains clanking stopped me. I realized with horror that my wrist was shackled to the bedpost. Because I had no strength to stand, my ankles had been spared. "You're the one who's crazy," I shouted, my voice raspy. Harold's face turned ugly. He suppressed his anger, squeezing the words out through clenched teeth. "I will not marry a dead man. If I'm like this, it's thanks to you," I shot back. "What right do you have to lecture me from your high horse?" "You will stay here," he commanded, "and I will take care of you." "Then you better take good care of me, Your Highness," I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Otherwise, if I'm the slightest bit unhappy, I might just die." "Don't worry." Harold stepped closer, leaning down until our noses almost touched. "I will take very good care of my wife." He emphasized the word wife with a bite. My eyelid twitched. We were officially enemies. A few days later, Harold resolved the trouble with Lucas, but he used it as an excuse to keep me confined in his mansion, tormenting me. "You're doing this on purpose." I gagged as he forced bowl after bowl of medicine down my throat. It was so bitter it felt like poison. "Drink," he ordered. Blood and tears welled up. My accumulated dissatisfaction turned into genuine anger. Whether he was annoyed that I disobeyed him or resentful that I forced him into marriage, he could have just kicked me out. There was no need to torture me with this vile brew every day. I lay on the edge of the bed, gasping for air, glaring at Harold. His face was tight, his eyes fixed on the unfinished bowl. "Drink the rest," he said. "No," I whispered. The madman pried my jaw open. The nausea overwhelmed me, and I vomited the foul mixture all over the bed, the stench filling the room. Harold's face was a mask of stone. He turned and stormed out. Good, I thought bitterly. I hope he never comes back. I drifted in and out of consciousness, hovering on the edge of death. When I fully woke, it was days later. Harold didn't force me to drink medicine anymore, but he started forcing me to eat. I had no appetite. Just the smell of food made me want to retch. "Eat it," Harold urged for the third time. I frowned at the steaming bowl of bone broth porridge. I remained unmoved. Forget porridge. I couldn't even keep water down. My dry, cracked lips parted slightly. Harold weighed his options for a long moment before speaking. "If you eat properly, I will let you see Lord Miller." My eyes snapped to his. "Is that a promise?" "A promise," he nodded. I licked my bloody lip and tried to lift the spoon with hands that shook like leaves in a storm. Harold clicked his tongue impatiently. He took the bowl, scooped up a spoonful, blew on it to cool it, and brought it to my lips. "So delicate," he muttered. "Arthur kept you in the palm of his hand, and you're still this sick. You can't survive without someone looking after you." I swallowed the porridge, ignoring the insult. I finished it. "I want to see my dad." "I'll invite him tomorrow," Harold said, wiping my mouth. "Tomorrow. He is busy with official duties." I waited all day. The next day, and the day after that, he said the same thing. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. He never intended to invite him. Just as I was about to explode with rage, the metallic taste of blood surged in my throat again. I coughed into my handkerchief, soaking it instantly. "Don't touch me," I screamed as Harold reached for me. "Let me." Cough. "Let me go?" Cough, cough. Harold played deaf. He picked me up, carried me into the inner chamber, and chained me to the bed again. I yelled hysterically until my voice gave out. Harold remained silent. Only when the royal physician entered and confirmed that my outburst hadn't killed me did Harold speak. He looked down at me from his towering height and announced the wedding date. "We get married tomorrow. Don't let my wife run away. Who wants to marry you?" I wheezed. "You." Cough. Before I could finish, Harold vanished. The physician shook his head helplessly. "Mr. Keith, please just take your medicine and listen to the regent." When have I not listened? I whispered, tears leaking from my eyes. The disgusting medicine, the nauseating porridge. Didn't I eat it all? But what's the use? I can't even see my father. It had been half a month. No news. I felt like I was being kept in the dark about my own funeral. I couldn't sit and wait for death. The next morning, just past dawn, maids entered to help me dress. Fearing I might plot something, Harold watched me personally. If he didn't have to entertain guests at the evening banquet, his eyes would have been glued to me every second. I was prepared for mutual destruction. When Harold pushed open the bedroom door that night, I tightened my grip on the sharp hairpin hidden in my sleeve. I lunged, but my wrist was caught instantly. Before I could process what happened, the hairpin was in Harold's hand. "Do you want to kill me?" Harold asked, his voice dangerously low. "Or do you want to kill yourself to threaten me?" He ripped the red veil from my head. The flickering candlelight swallowed half his body in shadow, making his expression unreadable. A terrifying pressure filled the room, dropping the temperature by several degrees. I didn't want to look at him. I ripped the heavy ornaments from my hair. "I want to sleep." Harold suddenly squatted down. He began to remove my shoes, his voice softening. "Recover well. In 3 days, I will take you back to your home for the visit." "Too late," I whispered. I grabbed a second hairpin from the bedside table and stabbed it toward my own neck. It pierced the skin, blood splattering onto the silk sheets. The world spun. Harold tackled me onto the bed, pinning me down. His eyes were dark and gloomy. "Keith." It was the first time he had called me by my name. It frightened me more than his anger. But the sword was already drawn. There was no turning back. I grabbed the hairpin with my left hand and stabbed at him again. Regrettably, I failed. He caught both my hands in an iron grip. A crack appeared in his cold facade. Assassinating your husband twice on your wedding night, he hissed. You are bold, my wife. He flipped me over. A bad premonition crawled up my spine as his chest pressed against my back. Panic set in. Harold, you can't touch me. Even though it was a royal decree, I never thought he would actually touch me. I assumed we would maintain a superficial relationship. His hand gripped my waist. I trembled all over, raising my voice. Harold, tonight is our wedding night, he breathed, his hot breath scalding my ear. Even if I devour you down to the bone, it is perfectly reasonable. I was frantic, on the verge of tears. In desperation, I bit his arm. He grunted, but only held me tighter. Relax, he whispered against my temple. I will be gentle. In my 20 years of life, I had never been more terrified. But I had no strength left to struggle. It felt as though all the energy had been drained from my limbs. My eyelids grew heavy. Suddenly, hurried footsteps echoed outside. Your Highness, a servant called out urgently. The king has summoned you. Harold's face went cold. He released me and strode to the door, then stopped. He turned back, walking over to the bed. He reached out a hand as if to pat my head, but stopped midair. I will be back in 3 days, he said. Wait obediently in the mansion. He really meant to take me home. I was half skeptical, half hopeful. But 3 days later, Harold did not return. Perhaps he was delayed. I comforted myself with this thought, waiting another few days with suppressing anxiety. Still, he did not return. The personal guard Harold had left to care for me was evasive when I asked questions. I knew then, something had happened. First my father, now Harold. I was next. Sure enough, a few days later, I was summoned to the palace. Queen Catherine sat on her phoenix throne, resting her head on her hand, eyes closed as if napping. It wasn't until the sun began to set that she finally spoke. Does the regent's wife have nothing to ask this palace? I struggled to lift my head, my vision dark and chaotic. Where is the regent? The queen chuckled. They say the regent and his wife are like fire and water, full of conflict. Seeing you today, you seem quite affectionate. The pain of suffocation radiated through my chest. I dug my nails into my thigh, forcing myself to stay awake. I had to see Harold before I fainted. Keith, a voice called out through the haze. It was Harold. He was here. I tried to crawl toward him, but after kneeling for an hour, my legs felt like they were filled with lead. My body, held together by sheer will, finally collapsed. I vomited a large mouthful of black blood and darkness took me. Harold rushed over before I hit the floor. The familiar warmth of his body seeped through his clothes. Relieved, I closed my eyes. At least I saw him. Harold took me back to the mansion. Seeing my worry, he kept it short. Your father is fine. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. And you? Harold raised an eyebrow. You don't hate me anymore? I hate you to death, I muttered. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in this mess. I almost knelt my life away today. Harold let out a muffled laugh. He knelt by the bed and began to massage my legs. It is my fault. I apologize. His calloused hands rubbed against my skin, creating a friction that was both ticklish and warm. I shrank back, trying to hide. Don't hide, he said, gripping my ankle firmly. How can you hide? The medicinal ointment generated heat as he rubbed it in. He applied just the right amount of pressure, occasionally looking up at me. What do you want? I asked, covering my face with my sleeve. Harold smiled. I realized my wife has become beautiful again. Beau. Beautiful. I spluttered. I am a man. You should say handsome. Or at least, clean cut. Right, clean cut, Harold agreed, his tone teasing. But beautiful suits you best. You lecher. I shouted, embarrassed and angry. I tried to kick him, but he caught my foot easily. He rubbed his thumb over my arch, his body temperature seeping into me. I gripped the corner of my clothes, terrified he would do something right there. After a long time, Harold finally looked away and ruffled my hair. Tomorrow, I will take you home. I nodded numbly. This time, he didn't break his promise. He prepared many gifts for the visit. There were 10 horses alone. I hadn't seen my father in nearly a month. He looked more haggard. His old, cloudy eyes had added layers of frost. Keith is back, he said, his voice trembling. Let Dad get a good look at you. He tried to control his shaking hands, but the faint smell of medicine and blood on him couldn't be hidden. My father had been hurt. I lowered my eyes and used homesickness as an excuse to stay the night. Harold grabbed a quilt, intending to sleep on the floor. I stopped him. "You sleep up here," I said. "I have questions." I wasn't sure if he would answer, but I needed to know. My father and Harold were undoubtedly victims of the factional struggles. The court seemed calm, but underneath, dark currents were raging. The Crown Prince, Edward, and the fifth Prince, Henry, were fighting for the throne. My father, to save me years ago, had aligned himself with Prince Henry. Prince Henry was allied with the king's brother, the Duke of York. So naturally, the Miller family was seen as the Duke's faction. Harold was neutral, but as regent, his every move dictated the future. "What does my wife want to know?" Harold sat on the edge of the bed. Up close, I saw the dark circles under his eyes. "Was my father arrested on the day of the flower banquet?" I asked. "And what else?" I glared at him. Seeing I had guessed correctly, he stopped hiding it. "Between Prince Edward and Prince Henry, who do you favor?" he asked. "I want to save people," I said. "I just want my father to be safe." "This matter concerns the foundation of the country," Harold said gravely. "It is not something where wishing makes it so." "What about you?" I asked. "What about me?" He leaned in, locking eyes with me. "Why did you agree?" I frowned. "Why agree to marry into my family? You could have stopped my father. Even if the king fears your power, he wouldn't force you into a matrilocal marriage with a dying man." Harold's expression turned serious. "You have pulled me into this chess game," I continued. "Unless we didn't marry, I would have no good ending, even if I knew nothing." "Drink some water," he said, holding a cup to my lips. I was thirsty, so I drank from his hand, then glared at him for distracting me. Harold smiled. "They are unimportant matters," he said. "If there is something vital, I will not hide it from you." A dog can't spit out ivory, I thought. I didn't believe him. The next day, we returned to the regent's mansion. Waiting for me was more bitter medicine. "I won't drink it," I said. "How will you live if you don't drink?" Harold asked meaningfully. "I don't want to be a widower for the rest of my life." Just then, a servant arrived. "Your Highness, the Crown Princess has sent an invitation." Immediately after, another servant reported, "The Duke's wife has sent an invitation." Both claimed to be ill and wanted to ask me for advice on recuperation. It was a pretext. They wanted to get to Harold through me. "My wife is weak," Harold said decisively. "Decline them all." "You can't refuse every time," I said, tugging his sleeve. I whispered a plan to him. Harold narrowed his eyes. "It is my honor to marry such a clever wife. As a reward, drink 2 more bowls." "You ungrateful beast." I sent replies accepting both invitations for the same time. On the day, both noble women arrived early. They were immediately hit by the overwhelming stench of bitter medicine in my room. I wiped blood from the corner of my mouth, looking half dead. "Please forgive me, ladies. I really must drink this." Just as they were about to speak, maids brought in more steaming, black sludge. I suppressed the urge to vomit and swallowed bowl after bowl. By the time I finished, it was noon. I led them to the dining hall, chatting idly. Whenever the conversation turned to the princes, I coughed loudly to interrupt. Finally, I mentioned my father. I looked worried. The ladies leaned in, thinking I was about to reveal a secret. I clutched my handkerchief. Instead of words, a mouthful of black blood spewed out. I collapsed to the floor. "Oh no," a maid screamed. "The regent's wife has been poisoned. Call the physician." News that I had been poisoned in my own home, while entertaining the wives of the rival factions, shook the capital. Some said I staged it to escape. Others said I was bait to force Harold's hand. Regardless, the regent's manor was no longer neutral ground. However, the respite didn't last long. Urgent reports came from the border. Foreign enemies had breached 3 cities in days. The court needed a general. Surprisingly, both Prince Edward and Prince Henry recommended Harold. Whether they had new allies or planned a coup in his absence, I didn't know. But Harold told me the king was dying. He had left no will. It was a free-for-all. "The king has ordered me to march tonight," Harold said, the torchlight illuminating his grim face. I gripped his sleeve. "I will wait for you." Harold smiled, rubbed my head, and rode into the night. Half a month passed with news of victories. I thought he would return soon. But then, silence. Another half-month passed. No victory, no defeat. I sent messengers. They vanished. Another month. Still no news. One rainy autumn evening, my father arrived in his official robes. "Keith," he said, his voice grave. "Let's go home." The autumn rain carried a winter chill. Harold was missing. Prince Henry's faction, the Duke's faction, had gained the upper hand. The capital was about to change masters. On the day of the first snow, the peace was shattered. Prince Edward and Prince Henry began a bloody struggle for power. One wrong word in court meant execution. The terror spread from the palace to the streets. Neighbors were executed for gossip. The Miller family, having sided with Prince Henry early on, was safe for now. "Keith," my father said, "I have arranged for a friend to take you out of the city tonight." That meant the rebel army was at the gates. "I won't go," I said. "I have to wait for Harold." Just as I was packing, the Imperial Guard surrounded our house. A eunuch from Queen Catherine's palace stepped forward. The Queen orders all families of officials to enter the palace for protection. It wasn't protection, we were hostages. My father wanted to resist, but I stopped him. "Dad," I said, "I'll be fine." I climbed into the carriage, clutching the dagger Harold had left me. "If you are in danger, use it," he had said. Staying alive is the most important thing. That night, hundreds of women and children were herded into a side hall. The next evening, Queen Catherine summoned me. "Why aren't you eating, Keith?" she asked, eyes closed on her throne. "Does your Majesty have news of the regent?" I asked. "What do you think?" She smiled. A maid presented a tray with 2 pills. Red is poison. Black is a sugar pill. Whether the regent returns alive depends on you. Can you guarantee he returns? She smiled without answering. I gritted my teeth and swallowed the poison. Without my daily medicine, my body deteriorated rapidly. The poison flared every 2 hours. Pain like grinding stones crushed my internal organs. Every breath felt like inhaling needles. I prayed silently. Dad is waiting for me. I can't die. Days passed. Then, the sound of iron hooves shattered the palace walls. The women wept with joy, then despair. Prince Henry had lost. Prince Edward had won. He would purge all rebels. The Miller family would be executed. I couldn't hold on any longer. I vomited black blood and plunged into the abyss. In the darkness, I heard voices. "Harold, as long as you marry my daughter, I will spare the Miller family. And I will give you the antidote." "Harold." He came back. I opened my eyes. It was New Year's Eve. Harold had made the deal. "Here, drink some water." Harold supported me. He smelled of blood and old wounds. "Keith," he said softly, "tomorrow, I will send you home. I made a deal with Crown Prince Edward. I have to marry his daughter to save you. If there is something vital, I will not hide it." I recalled his words. I forced a smile and picked up a brush with trembling hands. I wrote a letter of divorce. It was my father who forced him. It was a mistake from the start. Now he had saved my family. I had no reason to keep him. Besides, he was marrying the new emperor's daughter. Before I could sign, a coughing fit seized me. Black blood sprayed over the divorce papers. I fell back into his arms. I saw his brows knit together in panic. It wasn't so bad, I thought. If I survived, Dad would take me away. Harold would be free. But before I could drift away, bitter medicine filled my mouth. Harold was feeding me mouth to mouth. "We are divorced," I complained weakly. "Why are you torturing me?" Harold's face was terrifying. He grabbed my collar, his eyes red. "I raised you for half a lifetime. I couldn't bear to touch you. You try dying and see what happens." "Say that again?" I whispered. "I didn't hear you." Harold rested his forehead against my shoulder. I heard him sigh. "Keith, marrying the princess is part of the plan. I won't let you go. Don't die." "What plan?" He looked up, cupping my cold face. "Sending you home is the safest place. The divorce is to gain Prince Edward's trust. When this is over, I will marry you properly." I was sent back to my father. I still didn't understand why he called me Keith so tenderly, or what he meant by raising me for half a lifetime. My father explained it all. When I was born, the royal astrologer prophesied that my life was tied to the fate of the nation. If I lived, the kingdom prospered. If I died, it fell. And Harold, as the other pillar of fate, shared a symbiotic destiny with me. Basically, my death would likely cause his. So, when I was diagnosed as terminally ill at birth, Harold secretly moved the entire royal hospital's resources to my aid. He spent nights searching for cures. He sent the ginseng, the snow lotus. He paid for my food, my clothes, My very existence, funneling money through my father so I wouldn't know. That time he went missing for half a month? He was gathering rare herbs for me. So, my father said he wasn't joking. He really has been raising you his whole life. But why does he like me? I asked. I don't know, Dad shrugged. But when I went to kidnap him, he didn't resist. He went to the king to ask for the marriage decree himself. The only reason I tied him up was because I was impatient, and he wanted to change his clothes first. I laughed. It didn't matter anymore. Prince Edward, fearful of delays, set Harold's wedding to the princess for 3 days later. Harold couldn't visit, but he sent letters constantly. Asterisk, are you eating? Are you drinking your medicine? I miss you. Asterisk, I replied with a few words. He wrote back essays. Asterisk, I miss Keith. I want to hug Keith. I want to kiss Keith. Asterisk, the day of the wedding arrived. Harold led the procession to the palace, went through the rituals, and sent the princess to the bridal chamber. His mansion was full of guests. He snuck out to find me. Don't come here, I said. It's dangerous. You don't trust me? He hugged me, burying his face in my neck. I said I would marry you properly, and I will. That night, at the banquet, Harold pretended to be drunk. Prince Edward received news that the palace was surrounded. He had won the battle against Prince Henry, but he didn't have the imperial seal. He left Harold and went to the king's study to seize it. Edward entered the study alone. Moments later, he backed out, a sword held to his throat. Brother Edward. Prince Henry smiled, stepping out from the shadows. You can't beat me. Prince Henry lowered the sword. Suddenly, the soldiers surrounding them switched flags. Archers appeared on the walls. Harold walked out, dragging Queen Catherine. We lost, my son, the queen wept. Prince Edward looked around in shock. He had walked into a trap. Where is my daughter? Edward screamed. Harold handed him a letter. The princess had been kidnapped by a female warrior, a staged event. The princess had run away with her lover, leaving a letter of gratitude. Prince Edward and Queen Catherine were defeated. They were exiled to the plague-ridden south, never to return. Prince Henry took the throne. He rewarded Harold by making him a hereditary duke. My father got a nice, easy job for his retirement, and I received a marriage decree. On the day of the wedding, Harold arrived early. The procession blocked the main street. He walked into my room, extending his hand. Keith, I'm here to marry you. I took his hand. That night, Harold wouldn't leave me alone. He massaged my back, his eyes full of affection. Does it hurt? I asked, tracing the scars on his chest. Not anymore. He explained the whole plan. The war at the border was a trap set by the princes. He and Prince Henry had formed an alliance long ago. They staged his disappearance to make the other factions reveal themselves. Queen Catherine took the bait, poisoning me to force him out. Keith is so smart. Harold kissed my cheek, his hands wandering. I blushed, stopping him. I don't want to. Not like this. You said your legs were better, he teased. I lied so you wouldn't carry me everywhere. Harold laughed softly, pinning me to the bed. I promise, I will be gentle. I won't let you die on this bed. You better not, I whispered, pulling him down for a kiss. You spent half a lifetime raising me. It would be a waste to break me now.